why morality is a trap when you don't understand the game. Let's start with a disturbing question. What if being good is the very thing that's keeping you weak? Not weak in the physical sense, weak in the sense of influence, resilience, control. Most of us were raised to believe that goodness is the highest virtue. Be kind, be fair, be honest, follow the rules. But Niccolo Machiavelli, the most brutally honest political philosopher in history, looked at the world and said, "That's not how power works." And worse, those who cling to goodness without understanding strategy are not just naive. They are targets.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Now imagine you're in a room full of people. Everyone's smiling. Everyone's polite. You want to believe they all mean well. But here's the Machiavellian twist. The person smiling the most might be the one planning your downfall. Because in the real world, appearances are weapons. Kindness is camouflage. And goodness is often a script people perform to gain trust, not to earn it, but to exploit it. Machiavelli didn't tell us to become villains. He warned us, if you don't understand how people use morality, you will be destroyed by those who do. This is hard to hear, because we want the world to be fair. We want virtue to be rewarded. But Machiavelli blows that illusion apart. He says, people are not as they appear. They are driven by self-interest, fear, ambition, and survival. And if you walk into a world like that with your head full of idealism, you're not enlightened, you're exposed. You're the one who gets played. And the person who plays you, they don't lose sleep. They win. Because while you were trying to be good, they were trying to be effective. So here's the setup. What if your greatest weakness isn't your lack of power, but your belief that power is bad? What if your moral compass has been hijacked by people who benefit from you staying small? Think about it. Who told you to be good? Who taught you that ambition is selfish? That self-protection is rude? That strategy is manipulation? Ask yourself, was it someone who wanted you strong or someone who needed you obedient? That's not a conspiracy theory. That's psychological warfare. And Machiavelli saw it centuries ago. Let's go deeper. What does it actually mean to be good? Most people can't define it. They confuse goodness with niceness, with compliance, with being agreeable. But goodness without wisdom is useless. Of course, it's dangerous. A good person who doesn't understand power is like a surgeon with no knowledge of anatomy. They mean well, but they can do serious harm, especially to themselves. That's why Machiavelli wrote The Prince not as a guide for tyrants, but as a survival manual for leaders. He wasn't promoting evil. He was revealing the rules of the game. And here's one of those rules. People will always choose appearance over reality until reality becomes too painful to ignore. That means the person who looks virtuous will be trusted, even if they're corrupt. And the person who tells uncomfortable truths will be attacked, even if they're honest. So if you want to lead, influence, or even protect yourself, you need more than virtue. You need vision. You need strategy. You need to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. Let me give you a real example. Imagine you're in a workplace, or a school, or even a family, where someone is slowly undermining you. They're subtle. They smile. They never openly attack. But behind the scenes, they manipulate. They twist your words. They plant doubt. And you keep being good, you stay quiet, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You hope they'll stop, but they won't. Why? Because your goodness is not protecting you. It's inviting them. You've made yourself safe to exploit. And Machiavelli would say, you're not wrong for being good. You're wrong for being unprepared. This is where the real philosophical tension lies. Can you be good without being naive? Can you be moral without being manipulable? That's the question Machiavelli forces us to face. Because if you can't, then your morality is just a costume, a weakness dressed up as virtue. And people who understand this, people who read Machiavelli not as a villain, but as a realist, they gain an edge. Not because they stop caring about right and wrong, but because they learn how to protect what matters. And that requires more than kindness. It requires clarity. Let's flip the script. What if you stopped trying to be seen as good and started trying to be effective first, ethical second? That doesn't mean abandoning your values. It means protecting them more intelligently. Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Most people misunderstand this. They think it means be cruel. But what he meant was this: being loved is fragile. Being feared is strategic. If people respect your boundaries, if they know you're not to be crossed, then your goodness becomes powerful. But if people see your kindness as weakness, they'll use it. Not always out of evil, but out of instinct. You've seen this in your own life. Have you ever helped someone only to be taken for granted? Have you ever stayed silent in the name of peace, only to watch chaos grow? Have you ever kept forgiving someone who never changed? That's not virtue. That's self-betrayal. And Machiavelli would tell you, stop it. Stop being good in a way that makes you invisible. Stop being moral in a way that leaves you powerless, because the world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards perceived strength. And if you want to do good, you have to survive long enough to do it. So what does real power look like? It's not dominance. It's not cruelty. It's discernment. The ability to know when to be soft and when to be sharp, when to forgive and when to draw a line, when to speak truth and when to stay silent, not out of fear, but out of timing. That's the art Machiavelli teaches, not the art of tyranny. The art of survival in a world full of masks. And if you don't learn this art, you'll keep losing to people who have no moral superiority, only more strategic awareness. Here's the twist that hits hardest. You don't become less good when you stop performing it. You become more real. When you stop trying to be nice and start being honest, your relationships change. Your self-respect grows. Your clarity sharpens. You stop attracting manipulators. You stop tolerating dysfunction. You don't become hardened, you become wise. And wisdom, according to Machiavelli, is the highest form of power, because it allows you to navigate a brutal world without becoming brutal yourself. So let me leave you with this. What version of goodness are you living right now? Is it the kind that makes you strong? Or the kind that keeps you small? Is it goodness that protects values? Or goodness that avoids conflict? Is it rooted in truth or in fear of being disliked? These are not easy questions, but they're necessary. Because the world doesn't need more fragile virtue. It needs unshakable clarity. And the people who cultivate that, they don't just survive, they reshape everything they touch. How to be dangerous without losing your soul, the Machiavellian path of ethical power. There's a powerful myth in modern culture that says, if you're good, everything will work out. That if you just tell the truth, work hard, and treat people fairly, the world will reward you. But if you've lived long enough, you know this isn't always true. Good people get fired. Honest people get silenced. Kind people get walked over. And the worst part? They often blame themselves. They think, maybe I wasn't good enough. But Machiavelli would tell you the opposite. He would say, you've done nothing wrong except trust a broken system too blindly. You were taught to play by rules others don't follow. You were told to be transparent while others were trained to be tactical. You were told to give people the benefit of the doubt while others were trained to exploit it. And when you lose, whether it's in business, politics, relationships, or life, you're left wondering, why is doing the right thing not enough? And Machiavelli's answer is chillingly clear, because power doesn't listen to purity. It listens to pressure. But this doesn't mean you need to become ruthless. It means you need to become dangerous. Not dangerous in a violent sense, but dangerous in the way a wise lion is. Calm, controlled, but fully capable. The kind of person who doesn't seek conflict but is never afraid of it. That's what Machiavelli admired. Not cruelty, but command. And here's where it gets real. You can be ethical and powerful, but only if you stop trying to be liked by everyone. You have to be willing to be misunderstood, misjudged, even feared, if it protects what matters. So here's the real question. What does it mean to be ethically dangerous? It means knowing when to say no, even if it costs you approval. It means drawing boundaries that aren't negotiable. It means making decisions that are unpopular but necessary. It means refusing to explain your every move to people who don't have your best interest at heart. And most of all, it means being grounded in something deeper than public opinion. Because if your identity is built on being liked, you'll never do anything that truly matters. Let's get tactical. You want to be ethical, but not soft. Strategic, but not manipulative. Powerful, but not oppressive. So how do you walk that line? Machiavelli would say, you start by understanding the nature of people. Not who they pretend to be, but who they are under pressure, under fear, under ambition. Because when you see people clearly not idealistically, you stop being shocked by their behavior. You start planning for it. For example, stop assuming that everyone wants peace. Some people thrive on chaos. Stop assuming that your transparency will be met with honesty. Some people use your openness as ammunition. Stop assuming that giving someone a second chance will change them. Some people see forgiveness as weakness. This doesn't mean you become cynical. It means you become prepared. And once you're prepared, you stop reacting, you start leading. Here's a practical exercise. Think of the last time someone betrayed your trust. Ask yourself not what they did, but why you didn't see it coming. Was it because you ignored signs? Because you assumed they shared your values? Because you didn't want to seem judgmental? That's not kindness. That's self-deception. And Machiavelli would say, you cannot influence the world if you refuse to see it. Now flip it. Think of someone who commands respect, who walks into a room and is taken seriously without saying a word. That person isn't just lucky. They've cultivated presence. And presence is built on one thing. You are no longer afraid of losing things that don't define you. Approval, fitting in, being seen as nice. All of that fades when you realize you're not here to be liked, you're here to be real. And realness combined with strategy, creates something unstoppable, ethical power. Here's what they won't teach you in school. If you want to protect the good, you have to be willing to confront the bad. That means conflict. That means discomfort. That means risk. And most people avoid power not because they're humble, but because they're afraid of responsibility. Because when you claim your power, you can no longer blame the system. You become the system. You stop being a victim and start becoming an architect. And that's terrifying, because it means you have to choose who you'll become. Machiavelli knew this. That's why he didn't write fairy tales. He wrote about consequences. He warned, if you try to be good without being strong, you will be used by people who are strong without being good. And you'll call it fate. But it's not fate. It's failure to evolve. Because evolution, in the human world, is not about survival of the fittest. It's about survival of the most aware. And awareness isn't just seeing what's happening, it's knowing how to respond to it without losing yourself. So ask yourself, what would it look like for you to become dangerous in a way that honors your values? Maybe it means speaking up when it's easier to stay quiet. Maybe it means walking away from people who only respect your silence. Maybe it means building something no one else believes in because you see what they can't. Whatever it is, know this: your power does not lie in how safe you make others feel. It lies in how deeply you're willing to stand for truth, even when it costs you. Let's bring it home. Power is not about control. It's about clarity. When you're clear about what matters, you don't beg. You don't chase. You don't shrink. You don't over-explain. You move. You act. You decide. And in that clarity, people either align with you or reveal themselves. That's how ethical power works. It doesn't dominate. It divides. It separates the real from the fake, the loyal from the opportunistic, from the rooted from the reactive. And that division is what creates impact. So if you've been trying to be good your whole life, maybe it's time to stop. Not because goodness is wrong, but because your current version of it is incomplete. You need to add strength to it, add intelligence to it, add strategy to it. Because only then does your goodness stop being decoration and start becoming power. The kind of power that doesn't just survive in a Machiavellian world, but actually reshapes it. And that brings us to the final stage. Because once you understand how to be dangerous without losing your soul, you'll face your final challenge: what happens when you gain real power? What do you do with it? Because Machiavelli didn't just warn about weakness. He warned about what power does to people who never learn to master themselves. And that's what we'll unveil next. When good people get power, why most of them become monsters and how you don't. Let's be brutally honest. Most people who gain power don't become better, they become worse. Why? Because power doesn't create character. It reveals it. It magnifies what's already there. And when a person has spent their entire life being good, only because they were powerless, they don't know who they are once nothing is stopping them. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He didn't fear tyrants who were born ruthless. He feared the idealists who suddenly got control and realized they didn't know how to handle it. Because the moment you get power without self-awareness, you become dangerous not to enemies, but to everyone. Here's the Machiavellian twist. Being good when you're weak isn't virtue, it's restriction. It's easy to act humble when you have nothing to protect. It's easy to be generous when you have nothing to lose. But what happens when you have influence, wealth, reach, authority, when your words shape lives, your decisions shift systems? That's when your true nature emerges. And if you haven't done the deep work, if you're still addicted to approval, still afraid of confrontation, still unsure of your own values, then power becomes a weapon in your hands. Not because you intended harm, but because you never learned how to wield it. Think about the leaders, influencers, bosses, politicians who started with good intentions. Many of them began by saying, "I just want to help." But over time, that pure desire got twisted. Why? Because they were never trained to handle influence. They never learned how to separate ego from mission. They began defining themselves by their status. And when that status was threatened, they didn't return to humility, they reached for control. That's the moment the transformation begins. And Machiavelli would say, they didn't become evil. They became unprepared souls surrounded by temptation. So I'll ask you something that most people are too afraid to even consider. What would you do if no one could stop you? Not what you hope you'd do. What would actually happen if all obstacles disappeared, if you could bend the world to your will? Would you still be kind? Still be fair? Still tell the truth? Or would you slowly start justifying little compromises? Would you start thinking, well, this is for the greater good, as you silence dissent, punish your critics, or rewrite history in your favor? Because the scariest part of power isn't what it does to others. It's what it reveals about you. This is why Machiavelli's work is still feared, misunderstood, and misquoted. Because he didn't give us comfort, he gave us a mirror. And what we see in that mirror is not just the world's corruption, but our own potential for it. He shows us that power is not a moral force. It doesn't choose sides. It only flows to those who understand it. And if you don't understand it, if you walk into power with only ideals but no structure, no strategy, no inner clarity, then you'll either be destroyed by it or corrupted by it. And in both cases, you'll call it fate, when really it was lack of preparation. So how do you prepare? How do you become the kind of person who can handle power without becoming a monster? You start by building internal architecture. You stop relying on external validation. You stop defining yourself by your image. You start asking questions that strip away illusion. Questions like, what am I willing to lose for the truth? What is my line that I will not cross no matter how much I gain? Where does my worth come from, status or stillness? Because if you don't answer those questions now, power will answer them for you. And the answers won't be flattering. Next, you cultivate the one trait Machiavelli quietly respected more than any other: self-mastery. Not self-denial, not self-loathing, mastery. The kind of inner discipline that doesn't need applause. The kind of focus that doesn't waver in chaos. The kind of restraint that chooses when to act and when to wait. Because in Machiavellian terms, the most dangerous people are not the loud ones. They're the ones who can sit in silence, watch the storm, and still know exactly what to do next. Let's get real. You will be tempted. If you ever gain real power, people will flatter you. They'll fear you. They'll project onto you. And in that whirlwind, you'll feel the pull to become the version of yourself they want you to be. That's when the erosion starts. One small compromise for popularity. One silence to avoid backlash. One lie to protect your image. And suddenly the person you were honest, grounded, clear is gone. Replaced by a mask, a role, a ruler who forgot why they started. This is why Machiavelli warned us, if you want to be loved, be ready to be betrayed. But if you want to lead, be ready to be feared for the right reasons. And the right reason isn't cruelty. It's consistency. It's integrity. It's the ability to say, no, I won't cross this line even when you could. Especially when you could. That's what makes power sacred, not that you have it, but that you choose not to abuse it. That's not weakness. That's godlike restraint. Let me ask you a question that could change your life. What does it mean to become untouchable not by domination, but by discipline? Imagine a version of yourself that cannot be seduced by attention, cannot be shaken by criticism, cannot be broken by chaos. That version of you isn't born. It's built through fire, through loss, through deep, uncomfortable truths. And once you become that person, power doesn't corrupt you. It amplifies you. It makes your clarity louder, your presence sharper, your impact deeper, because you're no longer performing. You're anchored. So this is Machiavelli's final gift to us, not a guide for tyranny, but a blueprint for real leadership. He doesn't tell us to abandon goodness. He tells us to fortify it, to stop being fragile, to stop being naive, to stop imagining that the world will spare us because we have good hearts. It won't, but if we combine our good hearts with sharp minds, resilient spirits, and ruthless clarity, we don't just survive. We reshape the world around us. The world needs fewer people trying to be liked. It needs more people who are unshakably clear, people who can enter a broken system and not become broken, people who can hold power and still speak truth, people who can be feared for their precision, not their violence. That's the new model of strength. And that's the only way we protect what's good, by making it unbreakable. So I'll leave you with this. What kind of leader are you becoming in your own life? You don't need a title to have power. You're already leading through your choices, your energy, your presence. The only question is, are you leading from fear, from image, from craving? Or are you leading from wisdom, from stillness, from truth? Because if you master that, if you stop trying to be good and start being whole, then no matter what the world throws at you, you won't just survive. You'll own the storm. And maybe, just maybe, that's what Machiavelli wanted all along.